Alright, well, I did my own independent study based on people's personal testimony as they try to reach out to the masses about the injustice done to them. Patient 1 said hospital makes them worse. Patient 2 noticed cuts on hands that they had and they were depressed. Patient 3 had started smoking weed at 15 but had panic attacks prior and claims that the weed may have made it worse, but she didn't really understand. Which is much more likely a progression of panic attacks by itself, not related to weed. She mentioned she ran and walked in circles over and over, and the effects wore off. This sounds like the effects of somebody panicking, not knowing what to do, rather than marijuana. Now, we go to patient 4, and they have a lot of statistics memorized, and she thinks she knows best. And I determined that it was a model given a biased report. I go to patient 5. It was a typical cheerleader type of lady. She blabbing on and on, like, oh my God, and contradicting themselves, and they want to talk to somebody so bad. Patient 6 was in electroshock therapy against their will and had reached out to people on YouTube because the psychiatrist was not agreeing with it. And they had the stigma of being labeled, and they brought up the DSM, the Diagnostic Statistical Analysis of mental disorders, which they say is fabricated. So patient 7 says that they are diagnosed with bipolar and manic disorders. They are forced, as well as the other patient, I believe it was patient 6, to have shock treatment, and that this person wanted to kill themselves and has night terrors, afraid of the treatment. Okay, and we go on to quotes from doctors themselves. Dr. John Breeding had mentioned that people are like animals that should be left to free, express themselves. He used the term of wild colts. You should watch his videos. He talks about how mental disorders are superficial and that people just need to express themselves and this kind of thing. Now, we go to Dr. Jeffrey Shaler. He says the only true political sin is independence, and he's quoting somebody else. And he's a psychologist, and he claims that nobody can understand if someone has a mental disorder based on lesions in their brains by looking at pictures or brain scans. And he says that psychiatrists had to invent their own book of diseases because pathologists won't have nothing to do with it, and that a pathological text is something that somebody has, as opposed to the DSM, which is a behavior that somebody else has observed in you. And he brings up how when you're in a situation where someone has more authority or in a higher position in society than you are, that they are able to easily manipulate the system and call it in and have you picked up for this perceived mental disorder, and that it was a mechanism of control. It's funny how he uses the same terms that I used prior to seeing his videos. Matter of fact, prior to the turn of the century. I've been saying this since I was about 13 years old. Now, we go on to I want to speak briefly about the history of mental psych wards and mental asylums. Years ago, people with epilepsy were considered witches or possessed by Satan, and these people were, quote, burned at the stake. Just 100 years ago, people with mental disabilities were regularly made to take cold baths so they were freezing, and they were electrocuted on a daily basis against their will. This was part of the outrage that was coming from the ancient psych wards and mental asylums, which continues to this day, especially in New Zealand and Ontario, but also as well in America. So we get to another quote I'd like to bring up, is that this is myself that I was inspired while watching the videos to say, and I don't know if anyone's ever said it before. I haven't heard everybody's opinion on it. I haven't read every book, but this came to my mind. I said that a cross was a weapon used against Jesus Christ. Is it a coincidence that many hospitals have a cross on them to this day? Thank you.